Hello guys, welcome to my channel. In this video we are going to see about binary serialization and deserialization in C#. So what is binary serialization? Consider a scenario. You have your software up and running and it allows the user to enter a bunch of data. This data is stored in the memory while the program is running, and we will have a bunch of objects with state for each of the objects. So a software is up and running and we have a bunch of objects with states. We need to store it in external storage medium such as hard disk or internet. So to store it, we will prefer to be an XML data or some binary data or some JSON data. So if we store this in binary data, we will be able to have a binary files which represents the object's state originally created in the program. So this process of converting the objects in C# with its state to a binary format is called binary serialization. And the reverse process, where we have a stream of bytes as binary data in some storage medium, and we convert it back to the original objects with its states, it's called binary deserialization. So there you have it. Conversion of objects to binary data is called binary serialization, and the binary data to objects are in the reverse is called binary deserialization. So what we are going to see in this video is fairly simple. First, we will start with a form that's requesting user detail like name, email, phone number, etc. And we use that and demonstrate binary serialization by saving all those entered details to a file, which would be the contents would be in typical hex codes, which is a binary file, and then we load the data back to the UI from the binary file. This is called a deserialization process. First one is serialization process, and once we do that, we will see about how to ignore certain fields of the objects or class, and we also see about marking certain fields as optional so that they don't the whole process of deserialization will work regardless of the field present or not. And we will see about how we can initialize the ignored fields, and also we will see about setting up optional field values if that value is not present in the stream of bytes in the binary data file. So let's code. So we are starting with a previously created project. It's used in XML serialization and regex video. I add this video in the description below. You can view it if you want to. So we have a form here which requests user data like name, phone number, email, date of birth, and username. And correspondingly, we have a user class here which has the fields for each of the text boxes in the form. And if we click on register, we are going to save it to a separate file, and if you're clicking load, we are going to use that file and load back the data to these fields. So it's as simple as that. So it's already done for XML serialization. We are going to do for binary serialization in this video. So since everything is already ready, we could go to this event handler and write a new method here, user.serialize binary. Let me add the method real quick. Let me go to this method. So this method, like XML serialization, we are going to get a file name as input, and we are going to save that particular user data into the binary file. So it's going to be like a few lines of code. Let's do it. So first we need a way to access files. So we are going to create a FileStream object for that. So I need to use file mode as create. Let's see what. Yeah, I need to use create. So while we are going to save that binary file, it will create a new file for us, and then I'm going to use the actual class that's involved in binary serialization, which is binary formatter. This class is available in this particular namespace system.runtime.serialization formatter binary. So yeah, import that. I have already added this using statement here. Then it's as simple as formatter serialize stream this. So basically I'm giving this file stream object as input, and I'm giving this particular user object, and I'm serializing it. The thing with binary formatter is doesn't really require a type of parameter. If you see this in XML serializer, we were using type of argument, but in binary serialization, it doesn't require anything like that. And another one thing you need to do is mark this particular class we are serializing as serializable. Otherwise, it will throw an error. I think this 3 lines of code we are ready. I'm going to use an using statement here so that garbage collection happens automatically. So we are good. So let's see this in action. Let me fill this details real quick. So let me click this register, ROM registered. This means I should get both the XML file and binary file. Let's go to the folder. Yeah, we have a binary file saved here. We have an XML file saved here because we were using both the methods. So typically it may not be readable, but you could see the data we had just entered here. What this file contains is some delimiters to separate out the data, some length information as to how many characters we need to read for each of the fields, and some information about the class here. Yeah, typically we will have a class information followed by the field information, and followed by the data for each of the fields. So this is how a typical binary file will look like, and the contents of the binary file will be. But what we could see is the difference. In this case, wasn't much, but for XML serialization, yeah, we have a neatly organized thing in XML format. So we have saved the data to a binary file. Next thing we need to do is load from that binary file. So let's do that. Let me add a binary method. So we generated a method here. Let's go add the code. And this is going to be a simple 3-line code like serialization. So let me copy the code here and paste it like any programmer would do. We have created a FileStream object to access the file, and we are going to use open file mode. We don't want to create it. And we have a binary formatter object, and binary we need to just deserialize it. Return deserialize stream, and we need to cast it into user object. So this is done, and we are getting this user and setting it to corresponding fields here. It's as simple as that. So let's run this, and let me load this. Oops, I think some exception occurred. Okay, I think I have been using the wrong file here. I am using the XML file. We need to change it to binary file. So let's load this. Yeah, it works fine. And what we see in this binary file, we are able to load it into the GUI. Done with saving the binary file and loading back the binary file. So serialization and deserialization is complete. The next step, you are going to use an optional field. So I am going to introduce two fields here. Let me introduce public string designation, and I'm also going to use public string a session token, which is typically a software thing. Let's assume that it's a software thing. So designation, I'm going to demonstrate optional field. Just use the right namespace. And series session token I'm going to use for non-serialized. So what this essentially means is the fields which is marked by optional field, and if the stream of bytes in the binary data file doesn't have this particular information, it will just ignore and assign some default values. So in case of string, it will assign as null, and in case of integer, it will assign as 0. And for non-serialized fields, it's typically going to ignore it while serializing it, so the binary data won't have any information regarding this. And we are going, while deserialize, it would just take a null thing for string. So it's more or less similar to optional field, but it's different in the way it works. So let me add some UI level thing to accommodate the new fields. Session token is an internal thing. We don't need a separate field, I guess. So yeah, let's add this in register event handler. So we have added it, and let's add the session as well. And I'm going to use GUID. Uh, it would randomly generate some strings separated by colon, se- separated by hyphen. So we have everything ready. Let's see this in action. What we should essentially see is we should see an additional information for a designation, but we shouldn't see anything related to session token. So let's run this. Let's fill this real quick. So let's click register, and it's registered. I think let's close this. The file should be updated now. Yeah, we have the software manager here, and the designation is added here, but the session token is added nowhere. So that's how it works. The fields that are marked with non-serialized won't show up in the binary file, and those fields are essentially ignored while serialization. And to demonstrate optional field, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this particular designation information from the binary file. So essentially, it should be achieved by removing these characters. Yeah, so I have removed this. Now let me load it back. Let me place a breakpoint here. I guess it should be here. So let's click on load, and we have essentially deserialized already. But you see, even if the information is missing, it's going to ignore and just return null for this. So this is the purpose of optional fields in a class. So now we have essentially used optional field and non-serialized fields and demoed it in our example. Now let's go ahead and fill in these fields with some initial values. For optional fields, you see the information might or might not be there in the stream of bytes in a binary file. So what we are going to do is fill this with some value if the value doesn't exist in the binary file. So for that, we are going to use another attribute called Deserialized. So we are going to add a method in this class and mark it with onDeserialized. This would essentially fill in the designation field with some value if the value doesn't exist in the binary file. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's add a public void onDeserialized method, and streaming context is the parameter here, and we are going to just decorate it with onserialized deserialized decorator. So what this method will do is this method gets called once the deserialization is complete, and since we have marked designation is as an optional field, if that information is not in the binary file, this would be null. If it's null, we are going to fill this with some value designation to, let me say, worker. Yeah, and another thing we are going to do is we have a non-serialized field session token, and we are not going to save it in a binary file. So while deserializing it back, I am going to fill it with some value. So for that, we have another method called another decorator called on deserializing. So that's a different. Deserialized, which means after deserializing, and on deserializing means before deserializing. So you're going to add another method and decorate it with on deserializing streaming context. So here I am going to fill that non-serialized field, which is session token. So I think we are good to go. Let's run this and click on load. So the deserialization is complete, and you could see that since the software manager, that's the designation, is removed here, what happened here is it filled in with some default value that I set as worker. And another thing is it initialized that session token as this value, which is new GUID. So we have that optional field and serialized field initialized somehow with some values, and it's ready to use in this UI. Yeah, it's filled, I guess. Let me check real quick. Yeah, I haven't added here, so it should work fine. Let's continue. Yeah, it's coming back as worker. Let me undo the change in the binary file and see what happens. So I have added back the software manager designation in the file. So now I will see if it comes back here. So if you see this user object, you could see that software manager shows up here, and yeah, it loads. So in this video, we have essentially seen saving objects to a binary data file. It's by serializing it, and we were loading the saved binary data to the software by deserializing it, and we have seen how to use optional fields and deserialize and ignore certain fields by non-serialized decorator, and we have seen how to use on serialized and on deserialized and deserializing uh, decorators for filling in default values for optional and ignored fields. So that's it for this video. If you like this video, please subscribe to this channel to get hold of future videos. Thank you.